Why do you keep helping people who hurt you? Not once, not twice, but in a pattern so consistent that at some point you have to stop calling it bad luck and start calling it something else. Why do you pour everything into people who repay you with betrayal? Why do you choose again and again the ones who cannot or will not give back? Why does your generosity, which should be your strength, keep becoming the thing that leaves you wounded? If you've ever stood in the wreckage of a friendship or relationship where you gave everything and they turned on you, and you found yourself asking not just how could they do this, but why did I let this happen again, this video is for you. This is not about judging you for your kindness. This is about understanding the psychology underneath it, both yours and theirs. Because the pattern has two sides. There is the person who betrays, and there is the person who keeps choosing people who will. And until you understand what drives both, the cycle will not break. You are deeper than you know. 1. The wound that makes you need to be needed. Let's start with the part of this pattern that most helpers don't want to look at, which is why they have to. You are not helping because you are simply a good person, although you may be that too. You are helping because somewhere deep in your psychology, being needed by someone else makes you feel like you matter. Your worth is tangled up in your usefulness, and that tangle did not start yesterday. It started long ago, probably in childhood, when you learned that love was conditional on what you could give. Psychologists call this the caretaker identity, a self-concept built on the idea that your value comes from taking care of others, from solving their problems, from being the one they cannot do without. And it develops in children who were parentified, who had to be the emotional support for adults who should have been supporting them, or in children who learned that the only way to receive attention or affection was to earn it by being helpful, compliant, indispensable. What that child learned and what you are still operating from is that you are not inherently worth loving. You have to perform worth by being useful. And when that belief runs deep enough, you will subconsciously seek out people who need saving, because their need confirms the only version of your worth you were ever taught to trust. You do not choose broken people by accident. You choose them because their brokenness gives you a role, and that role feels like the only way you know how to matter. This is the unmet childhood need underneath the pattern, the need to be seen, valued, loved for who you are rather than what you do. And because that need was never met, you spend your adulthood trying to meet it by proxy, by being to others what you needed someone to be for you, hoping, unconsciously, that if you give it away, it will somehow come back. But it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because you keep choosing people who are incapable of reciprocating, which means the wound stays open and the need stays unmet, exactly where it always was. 2. Why being helped feels like an attack. Now let's turn to the other side of this dynamic, the person you helped and what your generosity did to them psychologically, even though you meant no harm. Because here is the thing that most helpers do not understand. When you help someone who has a fragile sense of self, your kindness does not feel like support, it feels like a threat. This is called threatened egotism in psychology, the experience of having your competence, your strength, your autonomy called into question, and the defensive anger that rises in response. Your help, no matter how gently offered, carries an implicit message. You could not do this alone. You needed me. And for someone whose self-worth is already fragile, whose ego is already defending against feelings of inadequacy, that message does not register as care. It registers as an indictment. You become a mirror, and every time they see you, they do not just see a generous friend, they see a living reminder of a moment when they were weak, when they were dependent, when they needed rescuing. You are the evidence of their insufficiency. And some people, rather than sitting with that discomfort, rather than integrating the reality that needing help is human and does not make them less, will do something much easier. They will destroy the mirror. This is why the people you help most are often the ones who turn on you hardest. It is not because you did something wrong, it is because you did something that made visible a part of themselves they cannot stand to see, and the only way they know how to make that feeling go away is to make you go away. 3. The resentment of owing someone
Even if the person you helped does not have a fragile ego, even if they genuinely appreciated what you did in the moment, there is another psychological mechanism that can curdle gratitude into resentment over time: debt aversion, the profound discomfort of feeling like you owe someone something you can never fully repay. Human beings are wired for reciprocity. It is one of the foundational social contracts. You do something for me, I do something for you, and the exchange keeps the relationship balanced. But when the help is too big, when the debt feels insurmountable, reciprocity breaks down. The person you helped is left carrying an invisible weight, a sense of obligation so large that it shifts the entire power dynamic of the relationship. They are no longer your equal, they are your debtor. And that asymmetry over time does not produce gratitude, it produces resentment. Research from Stanford has documented this effect with striking clarity. People will ghost mentors and benefactors who helped them the most, not because they are ungrateful in the moment, but because the psychological weight of the debt becomes unbearable. Avoiding you becomes the only way they can escape the feeling of obligation. Cutting you off is how they balance the books in their own mind. This is why sometimes the more you give, the further they pull away. Not because you did too little, but because you did too much, and the debt created by your generosity became a burden they could not carry without resenting you for making them carry it. 4. How they make you the problem. As debt and discomfort build, the person you helped faces an internal crisis. On one side, the reality: I needed significant help and this person gave it to me. On the other side, their self-concept: I am strong, capable, independent. Those two things do not fit easily together, and rather than revising their self-concept to integrate the reality, rather than accepting that needing help does not make you weak, many people choose a third option. They revise the reality instead. This is where projection enters the dynamic. Projection is a psychological defense mechanism where you take a feeling you cannot tolerate in yourself and attribute it to someone else. The shame of needing help, the feeling that I am inadequate, is too painful to hold, so the mind does something remarkable. It externalizes the shame and makes it about you. You were controlling. You had ulterior motives. You made me feel small. What was actually their shame becomes, in their revised narrative, something you did to them. And once that projection is in place, you are no longer the person you helped them. You are the person who harmed them. You are the problem. And that reframing gives them psychological permission to betray you, because in their mind, they are no longer betraying a benefactor. They are defending themselves against someone who wronged them. This is one of the most disorienting parts of this pattern for helpers, because you watch someone you supported rewrite history in real time. The help you gave becomes minimized, your intentions become suspect, and the gratitude they once expressed becomes evidence in hindsight of manipulation on your part. They are not lying exactly, they are constructing a narrative they can live with, and that narrative requires you to be the villain.
5. When your growth becomes their trigger. There is one more psychological dynamic that can turn a helper into a target, and it is perhaps the darkest: malicious envy. This is not the envy that motivates you to work harder so you can achieve what someone else has. This is the envy that wants to tear the other person down so they no longer have what you lack. When you first helped them, there was a clear hierarchy. You were in a position of strength. They were in a position of need, and as uncomfortable as that was, it was at least stable. But then something shifts. You do not stop growing. You continue to succeed, to thrive, to move forward. And now the gap between you is not just a memory of a moment when they needed help. It is a growing, present tense reminder that you are pulling ahead and they are not keeping pace. For someone who already resents the debt they owe you, your continued success becomes unbearable to witness. It is not just that you helped them once, it is that you keep being better, keep achieving more, keep reminding them of the inadequacy they are trying so hard not to feel. And malicious envy produces a very specific desire, not to rise to your level, but to bring you down to theirs. Your success becomes painful for them, and diminishing you becomes a form of psychological relief.
This is why betrayal often accelerates when you are at your peak, the very moment when you would most expect support, when your career takes off, when you reach a milestone, when you are visibly thriving, is often the moment they strike. Because your success does not feel like something to celebrate, it feels like a wound, and they are trying to stop the bleeding the only way they know how. 6. The pattern you cannot see from inside it. If this has happened to you once, you might call it bad luck. If it's happened to you 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, it is not luck. It is a pattern. And the question you have to ask yourself, as painful as it is this: what are you getting from this pattern that keeps you returning to it? The uncomfortable answer is that the pattern is serving you in some way, even as it harms you. Because if your identity is built on being needed, if your worth is tied to being useful, then healthy reciprocal relationships where people give back, where the dynamic is balanced, where you are valued for who you are rather than what you provide, those relationships do not activate the familiar circuitry. They do not give you the role you know how to play. They do not confirm the wound you are trying to heal. So you subconsciously filter for people who will need you in that specific, all-consuming way. You are drawn to the ones who are struggling, who are broken, who require saving, because their need makes you feel essential. And you stay far longer than you should. You give far more than is healthy, because walking away would mean confronting the possibility that your worth does not actually depend on being indispensable to someone who cannot function without you. The cycle repeats because you are trying to resolve an old wound with new people, and it never works. The childhood need to be valued for who you are cannot be met by performing usefulness for people who are psychologically incapable of seeing you clearly. But until you stop seeking external validation for the worth you were never taught to give yourself, you will keep choosing people who confirm the belief you are trying to disprove, that you are only valuable when you are needed. 7. Reciprocity, not transaction. So what is the alternative? How do you help people without falling into this trap? The answer is not to stop being generous. The answer is to learn the difference between reciprocity and transaction, and to build your helping on the former rather than the latter. A transaction is when you give with an unspoken expectation of return. The help is conditional. You are keeping score even if you don't admit it to yourself. And when the return does not come, resentment follows, because the giving was never actually free. It was an investment, and investments that do not pay off feel like betrayals. Reciprocity is different. Reciprocity is a pattern, not a single exchange. It is helping people who have demonstrated over time that they are capable of giving back, not necessarily in the same form or the same amount, but in a way that shows the relationship is mutual. Reciprocity is giving from enough rather than from need. It is helping because you can, not because you have to in order to feel valuable. And here's the critical distinction. People who are capable of reciprocity are also capable of receiving help without it threatening their sense of self. They can be vulnerable without shame. They can accept support without resentment. They can hold the discomfort of owing you something and translate that discomfort into gratitude rather than projection. Healthy people do not need to destroy you to feel okay about needing you. The shift you need to make is internal. It is not about choosing better people, although that will be a side effect. It is about anchoring your worth in something other than being needed. It is about asking yourself before you help someone whether you were giving from abundance or from the hope that this time, finally, the giving will make you feel like you are enough. And if the answer is the latter, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them is to step back. If you recognized yourself in this video, I need you to hear something clearly. The fact that you have been hurt by people you helped does not mean you are naive. It does not mean you are too nice. It does not mean your generosity is a flaw that needs to be corrected. What it means is that you have been trying to heal a wound that was never yours to fix in the first place. You have been giving to others what you needed someone to give to you, hoping unconsciously that the act of giving it would fill the hole it left, and it hasn't. Not because you gave it wrong, but because you cannot receive from yourself by giving to someone else. That is not how healing works. The people who betrayed you were not capable of receiving what you offered. Their psychology, their fragile ego, their shame, their envy made it impossible for them to hold your generosity without turning it into something else. That is not a reflection of your worth. That is a revelation of their capacity. And the pain of that revelation is real, but it is also clarifying. The work ahead of you is not to stop being generous. It is to stop giving your generosity to people who cannot metabolize it. It is to build your identity on something sturdier than being needed. It is about asking yourself before you help someone, whether you are giving from abundance or from the hope that this time, finally, the giving will make you feel like you are enough. And if the answer is the latter, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for them is to step back. The pattern will break when you stop needing it to work, and you will stop needing it to work when you finally give yourself what you have been trying to get from people who were never capable of giving it back. You are deeper than you know.